When someone breaks your heart, the natural reaction is to speak up, to respond, to protest, to explain your side. You feel like telling her how deeply she hurt you, how unfair she was, how much love you gave her, and how she just let it all go. That reaction is part of being human. It's what we do when we feel pain. We cry out. But there's a stronger kind of response, one that doesn't follow the path she was expecting. It's silence. Because silence, true silence, from someone she thought would never stop talking, never stop trying, never stop caring, becomes the loudest voice of all. When a woman walks away from or betrays a man who truly cared for her, she often expects a certain response. She's ready for the texts, the calls, the emotional crash. It boosts her ego. It supports her belief that she still matters, that she still has a hold on him. But when that response never arrives, when he just quietly walks away without a single word, her thoughts begin to spin. She starts to doubt whether she ever really meant anything. Her ego, the same ego that allowed her to act with such coldness, starts to tremble. And that's where the real breakdown begins. Not of your heart, but of the false image she had of herself. Silence isn't weakness. It's not running away. It's a choice. It's a man stepping back and thinking, you don't deserve to hear my pain. Not because the pain isn't there. It absolutely is. You've been wounded. But you don't hand the weapon back to the one who hurt you and then ask them to notice the damage. You don't let the one who caused the pain feel useful by reacting to them. You take that pain and you keep it private. You give it time to heal. And while she's listening for your voice, there's only quiet. In that quiet space where your voice once lived, she hears her own voice, and it gets louder. Without your presence to cover it up, she hears the truth of what she's done. That silence becomes a reflection, and in it, she doesn't see the powerful woman she believes she was. She sees someone who lost a man who would have given her everything. Then the question hits her, why aren't you shattered? Why haven't you come crawling back? Why haven't you tried to fix what she broke? That's when the crack in her ego shows up. She didn't just expect you to hurt. She expected you to hurt loudly. She thought you'd beg or scream or fall apart. But you didn't. You gave her none of it. You didn't bring the drama. You didn't feed the chaos. You didn't confirm her story. You gave her silence. And silence, to an ego that feeds on attention, is terrifying. This isn't revenge. This isn't about getting back at her. It's about self-respect. Because when you stay quiet, you're not just avoiding a fight. You're taking back your power. You're saying you no longer have access to my words, my thoughts, my emotions. They belong to me now, not to be used by you for comfort or control. And when you do that, the balance shifts. You regain what was always yours, your strength. The man who stays silent is the man who refuses to let the one who hurt him shape his story. He understands that real strength doesn't shout. It's calm, it's steady. It knows when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to stop feeding the thing that caused the pain. And sometimes the only way for someone to understand what they've truly lost is to leave them alone with the empty space they created. That's when she starts to break. Not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't. Not your words, but your silence is what shakes her. There's something powerful that happens when a man realizes he doesn't have to explain himself. When he stops chasing answers, stops begging for understanding, and lets the silence carry the truth. A woman who believes she's always the prize, always the one no man can walk away from, counts on one thing, that he'll come back. Maybe not today, but one day. Maybe not desperate, but still hoping. That belief keeps her illusion going. She sees your silence as temporary. She thinks you'll return. And as long as she believes that, she won't think deeply about what she's done. She won't feel regret. She'll just wait. But the longer your silence continues, the more that belief fades. It starts as a small thought. Why hasn't he said anything? Then it shifts. Maybe he's just waiting. But in time, it becomes something much heavier. Maybe he's really gone. That's when everything changes for her. Because what she once believed was power starts to feel like real loss. Not just any loss. Something permanent. That's what time does. It tears away the false stories. It makes the truth settle in. And as time passes, your absence becomes real. Not a strategy, not a trick. Real. And that's what her ego can't handle. It thrived on your attention, even when you were in pain. If you were angry, if you were suffering, it still gave her something to feed on. She could twist your emotions. She could explain your reactions in a way that kept her comfortable. But silence offers nothing. She can't twist it. She can't control it. She's left with nothing to hold on to. So what happens next? Time begins to break her down, slowly. Maybe she posts something online to catch your eye. Maybe she asks your friends about you. Maybe she throws out little signs to see if you'll respond. But you stay quiet. You stay gone. And that once proud ego, it begins to feel empty. She waited for a response that never came. And in its place, all she has is herself. No one else. No crowd. No show. Just her own decisions echoing back. This is when the real change happens. Not in a single moment, but over time, in the stillness that grows. She starts to remember how you were there for her, how you listened, how you cared, how you made her feel safe. Those memories rise to the surface, not because you reminded her, but because you're no longer around. Ironically, your silence creates the space for her memories to return. Without filters, without ego protecting her, silence and time together don't sit back and do nothing. They break down the walls she built. The false image she held, the one where she could hurt you and still be important, begins to fall apart. She sees now that the power she had only existed because you gave it. And now that you've taken it back, she's not in control anymore. You are, but you didn't fight for it. You reclaimed it by walking away. And that's what truly unsettles her. Someone whose sense of power was built on control now finds herself powerless, not because of force, but because you let go. And this part is important. It's not about being cruel. You're not staying silent to punish her. You're doing it because you've come to understand your value. You don't need her approval anymore. Your worth isn't something to be debated or proven, and you're done explaining it to someone who didn't see it when it was right in front of them. So the more time passes, the clearer it becomes. She didn't just lose a man. She lost a man who loved her fully, who had the strength to walk away with dignity. A man who didn't scream, who didn't beg, who didn't lower himself to prove something. A man who knew that silence speaks louder than any words. And the deeper that truth cuts into her, the more her ego cracks. Because in the space where your voice used to be, she now hears what she never wanted to admit. And by the time she finally understands it, it's already too late. You have to know something real about memory, especially emotional memory. People don't hold on to the facts. They hold on to how they felt, the emotional intensity, the depth of experience. And when someone who let you down, who hurt you, begins to notice your absence, they're not thinking about all their reasons. They're feeling something deeper. And what are those feelings telling them? They whisper, maybe I made a mistake. That realization isn't fast. It's slow. It's painful. At first, she'll act like everything's fine. She'll smile, laugh, maybe even date someone new. But underneath that, there's a discomfort growing. It starts like a small shadow. She won't talk about it at first. But shadows grow when the light disappears. And that light she had, that was you. Your steady love, your attention, the way you treated her like she was important, not just another face in the crowd. You gave her that sense of being valued, and now it's gone. Once warmed by your presence, now she's surrounded by a coldness she can't ignore. And it doesn't matter how many people she places around herself, none of them make her feel the way you did. Because you weren't trying to win her over. You weren't putting on a mask. You were simply yourself. Calm, grounded, truly there. And the more she tries to push that thought away, the more it lingers. Not because you're doing anything, but because you're doing absolutely. Your silence creates a space, and people always fill empty spaces. They fill them with thoughts, assumptions, memories. They go over old conversations. They question things. They doubt. So while you're going about your life, moving forward and minding your own path, she starts to notice the gap between what she expected and what's actually happening. She assumed you'd call, you'd chase, at least say something, but you didn't. And that silence, it's not just quiet, it's loud. It takes over. It speaks to her in the middle of the night. It echoes in her quiet moments. And here's the truth. When a woman with a strong sense of pride loses control over how she feels in a situation, it doesn't just bruise her ego, it shakes the entire ground she was standing on. Part of her pride was built on thinking you needed her more than she ever needed you. That she could take a step back and you'd lean in. That she could hurt you and you'd still come trying to fix things. But now, the whole story has changed. You didn't argue. You didn't try to explain. You just left. not in anger, but in peace. And peace hits harder than fury when someone is expecting chaos. When she thinks about you now, she doesn't see someone who begged or broke down. She sees your calm. She remembers how you kept your presence to yourself, not to punish her, but to draw a line. That picture of you standing steady while she chose to walk away, it stays with her. Not because of what you did, but because of what she did and what she lost when she made that choice. That's when the regret slowly starts to rise, quiet at first, then all at once. Your silence uncovers the truth. It shows her you had more depth than she realized, more strength than she thought. You were worth more than she treated you like. And there's nothing she can do now to change that. The more she thinks back, the more she understands how badly she misjudged you. That realization doesn't just hurt, it tears at her confidence. Because if she was so sure she made the right choice, why are you still in her thoughts? Why does she struggle to sleep? Why do your words and your absence still echo in her mind? You stayed centered. You didn't lash out. You didn't explain why you deserved better. And now, that's all she can focus on. Not because you said something clever, but because you didn't say anything at all. You let your actions speak. And those actions, that quiet, says more than any words ever could. In that silence, she starts to feel the weight of what happened, not because you made her feel that way, but because time and truth have a way of teaching without mercy, and they don't stop knocking. So let her feel it, let her carry it. Let time finish teaching the lesson you already began. There comes a moment in every emotional downfall when silence turns into something heavier. It becomes a mirror, one she can't escape, no matter how much she tries to look away. And in that mirror, she doesn't just see the empty space you used to fill. She sees herself. She sees the careless things she said, the moments she thought you'd always stay, the times she took you for granted. That reflection doesn't soften the truth. It shows it clearly. Ego is fragile, especially when it's built on the idea of control. She believed she had it. She thought she could pull away or test you and you'd always come back, that you'd stay, no matter how she acted. Not because she was cruel and not because she didn't care, but because deep down she assumed someone like you wouldn't have the strength to walk away. You were the stable one, the constant, the one who stayed even when it hurt. And to her, that made you predictable. That's when it all began to fall apart. Because when someone strong becomes unpredictable, it shakes false confidence to the core. When you didn't react how she expected, her whole reality started to shift. She thought she held the power. But the real strength in any connection doesn't come from control. It comes from self-worth. When you chose your peace over proving something to someone who didn't value you, you reclaimed your honor in a way she can't erase. What she didn't see coming was how quiet dignity could feel like a storm. You didn't argue, you didn't guilt trip, you didn't chase her through the emotional mess. You chose to walk away. And that choice became the hardest truth she's had to accept. Because when you lose someone who actually mattered, you don't remember the games. You remember the damage you caused. And that regret gets louder than pride. Now, she wakes up and looks at her phone out of habit. But there's nothing from you. Not today, not yesterday, maybe not for weeks. And each time she sees that empty screen, the picture gets clearer. She tries to cover the emptiness with noise. New faces, fleeting attention, compliments that don't mean anything. But none of it lasts. None of it fills the gap. Because none of it feels real. And deep inside she knows it. She remembers how safe she felt when you looked at her. Not with judgment, not with desire, but with genuine care. She remembers how rare that was, how hard it is to find that again. So now, the silence she once saw as weakness feels like thunder. It surrounds her, not in volume but in weight. The weight of what she gave up, the weight of who you are without her. And here's the harsh truth. She might never say this out loud. Not to you, maybe not even to herself. Because facing that truth would mean facing a side of her she spent years protecting. It would mean admitting she misses you, that she regrets it, that she wishes she had done it all differently. But that doesn't mean she doesn't feel it. That doesn't mean it isn't reaching her now. She might wear her pride like armor. She might act like she's fine. But every time she's alone with her thoughts, that armor cracks just a little more. because there's nothing more painful than realizing you pushed away someone who truly loved you and they didn't come chasing after you. You didn't need to raise your voice. You didn't need to plead. You didn't need to prove anything. You simply walked away with your self-worth intact, and that quiet step back, that's what left the deepest mark. That's what breaks the pride. Not revenge, not punishment, but the cold, undeniable truth that she lost something real, something that can't be replaced. Not because you were flawless, but because you were honest, and she was too proud to see it when it mattered most. So let her live with the quiet, let the reflection stay, let it show her everything she tried to ignore. Because sometimes the strongest message you can send is no message at all. Something begins to shift when the person you assumed would always stay just fades. Not with anger, not with a dramatic goodbye, but slowly and surely, with a calmness that's more powerful than any outburst. When you stop offering your energy, when you step back from the storm, it leaves a gap. And in that space, she starts to feel something she never thought she would associate with you not being there: emptiness. A kind of emptiness that no one else can fix, no matter how hard she tries. And that's because what she missed wasn't just your presence, it was your attention. It was how you actually listened, especially when no one else did. How you looked at her like she mattered, even when she was difficult, even when she tried to push you away. You gave her a kind of attention that couldn't be bought. It wasn't just words. It wasn't for show. It came from something real, from patience, from care, from genuine emotional effort. And even if she never admitted it, she started to rely on that. But she made the mistake of thinking your loyalty meant weakness, that you'd always be around, that no matter what she said or how she acted, you'd be there. And maybe for a while you were. Maybe you gave her more chances than she earned. Maybe you stayed longer than you should have, trying to do the right thing, over and over, until you couldn't ignore the truth anymore. Then, something in you shifted. You saw things clearly. You realized that your kindness had been taken for surrender. So you pulled back, not to punish her, but to protect your heart. Now that you're not there, your silence isn't just empty, it rings out. It's in every unfinished sentence, in every place you used to go, in the daily habits, the routines you shared, that morning message, that midnight call, that place where she could fall apart and feel safe. All gone, replaced by routines that now feel hollow, saying, but nothing feels quite right. She'll begin to notice it in the smallest things. The music that reminds her of you, the scent of your cologne that stays in her thoughts, the jokes she used to laugh at when you were the one saying them, and she'll come to understand that your attention wasn't just given away, it was something that made her feel real, seen, heard, and valued. And now that it's no longer there, she'll start chasing it. Maybe not from you directly, but from others. She'll search for approval, compliments, fresh faces, and quick affection, but all of it will feel empty, like dust slipping through her fingers, because none of them know her like you did. None of them cared like you did. They'll smile at her, say nice things, maybe even want her, but they won't truly see her. Not the way you once did. And she'll feel that absence like a heavy weight on her chest, getting heavier with each day. The harsh truth is, when someone has really been loved, they can't go back to being barely noticed. And that's what she'll realize, that your love created a standard, one that casual flings and shallow praise just can't meet. And the more she tries to recreate what she had with you, the more irritated she'll feel, because it wasn't just the attention that mattered, it was the person it came from. You see, she didn't just lose a partner, she lost the place where she felt safe, the emotional support, the one who saw her flaws and still stayed. And when she let that go, thinking she could find more, or that you'd always be there waiting, she made a choice. Her pride didn't understand, her heart would suffer from, but now she gets it. Now she sits in the silence she left behind. And it's not just quiet, it's overwhelming, because it's full of all the things she didn't say, all the things she didn't appreciate, all the things she now wishes she could undo. But time doesn't move backwards. Regret doesn't come with a second chance. Let the silence say what words never could. Let the absence speak louder than any talk or explanation. Because sometimes the strongest message you can send is to stop showing up for someone who never understood how much you meant until you were gone. You know, there's something deeply powerful, even a little scary about what happens when you stop trying to prove your worth. When you don't explain anymore, don't defend anymore, don't reach out just to remind them of what they're losing. When you sit with your own silence, when you let that be your voice, when you let distance say what your words once cried out for, it changes things. It creates a mirror. And in that reflection, she starts to see not just you, but herself. Not only who you were to her, but who she was while she had you. At first, she'll think your silence means you're weak. She'll tell herself you're sulking, waiting for her to notice. She'll believe it's a game, one she thinks you'll lose because you cared more. And maybe you did. Maybe you forgave her more times than she earned. Maybe you cared so deeply you gave up parts of yourself just to hold on. But that care, if it cost you your peace, your pride, your self-worth, can't be given freely anymore. Because eventually, silence isn't giving up, it's saving yourself. And when she sees that, when she realizes you're not playing hard to get, you're simply not playing anymore, that's when her world starts to shake. That's when her confidence begins to break, because she didn't think you were serious. She didn't believe the day would come when the man who always showed up would decide it wasn't worth the pain anymore. Now she has to sit with what she caused. Not loud, dramatic consequences, not revenge. Just the simple, painful truth of no longer having you, no longer hearing from you, no longer depending on your attention to boost her pride. That silence teaches. And it's a tough teacher because it doesn't just fill the space between missed calls and unanswered texts. It expands. It fills her head with questions only you could answer, but won't. It forces her to go back through all the times she ignored you, all the moments she brushed off your care, all the times she assumed you'd return because you always did. She'll begin to recall the small things she didn't think mattered. The way you looked at her when she spoke, the steady way you cared, the way you sensed something was off before she even said anything. She'll remember the comfort in your presence, the peace in your energy, and, most of all, she'll remember how naturally you gave those things to her and how easily she took them for granted. She'll slowly realize, maybe too late, that what you gave wasn't normal, that your love wasn't just affection, it was rare and true. Now, in the quiet you left behind, she hears all the things you never said, all the things you used to say but stopped. She hears what it means when someone finally sees their own value, enough to walk away from being undervalued. And that's when it hits. Not just regret, but a deep loss that no one else can fix. Because this kind of pain is personal. It's inside, it stays. During the silent moments when she's alone and nothing is distracting her, it sneaks in through memories of your voice, your kindness, your constant presence. Now missing, you see, staying in her mind forever. Doesn't always come from big scenes or emotional farewells. Sometimes it's the unmovable truth that you were the one who loved her, with no conditions, with no games, with no masks, and she let that go. She assumed your silence was weakness, but it was strength. And now that silence isn't temporary, it's final. Not because you hate her, not because you're getting even, but because you've finally chosen to love yourself enough to walk away from what hurts you. They'll try to fill your place, maybe right away, maybe without saying much, but the issue is, she's not looking to replace a man. She's trying to replace a feeling, a comfort, a presence. And that can't be copied just by anyone, because what she really wants now isn't just affection. It's the proof that she once had something special and lost it. That she misunderstood your quiet for surrender when it was really power. And that thought will echo inside her for years. So let her feel it. Let her face it. Let time deliver the message. And let your distance speak for itself, because some truths can't be told. They have to be lived through. And when she finally gets it, it won't be because you explained it. It'll be because she finally heard what your silence was saying all along.